The blaring lockdown alarm shattered the calm of James Rivera's advanced physics class at Riverside High. While other teachers froze, uncertain what to do, James instantly shifted into action mode. What his students didn't know was that beneath his unassuming exterior as their Filipino physics teacher, he was Special Agent Rivera of the FBI's Civil Rights Division, investigating systematic discrimination in educational institutions. "Everyone stay calm and follow my lead," James instructed, his voice carrying quiet authority. With precise movements that betrayed years of tactical training, he quickly secured the classroom door, guided students to the safest corner using advanced protective formations, and maintained perfect control of the situation. Through the window, he spotted an actual threat, an armed intruder in the East Corridor. James immediately transmitted the location to his FBI partner, Sarah Chen, who was coordinating with local law enforcement from her position as a school counselor. When screams erupted from a classroom down the hall, James made a split-second decision. "Stay here, stay quiet," he directed his students before slipping out to help. Within minutes, he had safely evacuated 3 classrooms of trapped students and staff, using expert tactical maneuvers to avoid the intruder's line of sight. His students watched in amazement as their normally mild-mannered physics teacher moved with the precision of a trained operative. The first police units arrived, led by Officer Mike Davidson, who had a history of discriminatory behavior toward minority staff. Despite James actively protecting a group of students, Davidson immediately targeted him. "On the ground now!" Davidson bellowed, weapon drawn. "We've got reports of an Asian male suspect." "Officer, I'm a teacher," James responded calmly, still shielding his students. "I'm evacuating these children to safety." "Yeah, right," Davidson sneered. "More likely you're their inside man. Hands behind your back." Even as James was protecting students from actual danger, Davidson roughly handcuffed him in front of the entire school, making a show of arresting the suspicious Asian man. "You're making a mistake," James stated quietly. "These children are still in danger." "Shut up," Davidson tightened the cuffs painfully. "I knew there was something off about you the moment you started teaching here. No way a Filipino could handle advanced physics." The real intruder was still loose in the building as Davidson focused on parading his wrongly arrested suspect, but he had no idea he was actually handcuffing an FBI agent who had just saved countless lives. "Officer Davidson," came Sarah's voice as she approached with her FBI credentials displayed. "Release him immediately." "Who the hell are you?" Davidson demanded. "Special Agent Chen, FBI, and you're currently hindering a federal agent during an active threat situation. The man you're wrongfully detaining is Special Agent James Rivera." The color drained from Davidson's face as James calmly turned to face him, now holding his own FBI badge. The physics teacher he'd profiled and arrested had just demonstrated more tactical expertise than Davidson's entire unit. "This is impossible," Davidson sputtered. "He's just a teacher." "I'm both," James replied evenly. "And while you were busy racially profiling me, I evacuated 4 classrooms from an active threat situation. Would you like to focus on the actual emergency now?" The gathered students and staff watched in amazement as James smoothly took command of the tactical response, coordinating with FBI teams to rapidly secure the building. The Filipino teacher Davidson had tried to humiliate was actually an elite federal agent who had just saved their entire school, and he'd captured more than just the real intruder. Every moment of Davidson's discriminatory arrest was recorded, providing clear evidence of the systemic prejudice James was investigating. The officer's assumptions about a Filipino teacher had led him to expose the very bias that would now be his downfall. The school gymnasium had been converted into a temporary FBI command center as James and Sarah processed the aftermath of both the emergency and Davidson's discriminatory arrest. Screens displayed footage from hidden cameras that had captured every moment of prejudiced behavior towards minority staff. Davidson's outburst was just the tip of the iceberg, Sarah explained, spreading documents across a table. Look at these incident reports. Every minority teacher who showed exceptional ability was targeted for investigation by his department. James reviewed the footage of his arrest. He was so convinced a Filipino couldn't be qualified to teach advanced physics that he ignored an active threat to arrest me. That prejudice endangered everyone in this building. And it's not just Davidson. Sarah displayed more evidence. Principal Roberts has been deliberately routing complaints about discrimination to Davidson's department, knowing they'll harass minority teachers instead of investigating the actual issues. Their investigation had revealed a disturbing pattern. Highly qualified minority teachers were routinely accused of faking credentials, helping students cheat, or being suspicious when their students performed well. The numbers are staggering. Sarah checked her tablet. 87% of minority teachers in this district faced baseless police investigations. Nearly half were forced to resign due to harassment. James's phone buzzed with updates from other undercover agents. His public arrest had triggered similar investigations nationwide. More minority educators were coming forward with stories of systematic discrimination. Look at Robert's email chain with the school board, Sarah highlighted messages. They specifically target teachers of color who show exceptional results. Any success by minority educators is treated as automatically suspicious. The evidence showed how deeply prejudice had infected the educational system. Police were being used to drive out minority teachers who excelled at their jobs. Davidson's body cam footage is damning. Sarah played the recording. Listen to how he immediately assumed I must be lying about being FBI too. He couldn't process that two minorities might be federal agents. James studied surveillance, showing similar incidents across multiple schools. They use these investigations to discourage minority teachers from taking advanced positions. Keep us out of higher education entirely. Latest data, Sarah compiled. Statistics: 300 documented cases of discriminatory investigations in this district alone. Pattern repeats across 12 states. The emergency lockdown had exposed more than just prejudiced police response. It revealed how discrimination was systematically used to undermine minority educators. You should see this. Sarah pulled up school board messages. After your physics students won the state championship, Roberts immediately requested Davidson investigate for cheating. They couldn't accept that a Filipino teacher's students could excel legitimately. James watched his current students being interviewed about the incident, each one describing how their suspicious Filipino physics teacher had just saved their lives using tactical skills Davidson assumed he couldn't possess. They never imagined consequences, Sarah observed. Thought their positions protected them until they targeted a Filipino teacher, gathering evidence of their discrimination. Outside the gym, more FBI teams arrived as parents and media gathered. The story of how prejudice had endangered students during an emergency was spreading rapidly. Everything changes now, James noted between debriefings. They created a system to drive out minority teachers, but their bias exposed it all. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the gym windows as James prepared to meet with district officials. The teacher Davidson tried to humiliate was about to expose systematic discrimination throughout the educational system. The school board's emergency meeting crackled with tension as James stood at the podium, no longer hiding his FBI credentials. The same officials who had supported Davidson's discriminatory investigations now faced the consequences of their prejudice. Let me be clear, James began, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had saved his students. Today's incident exposed more than just Officer Davidson's bias. It revealed how discrimination is systematically used to undermine minority educators in this district. Sarah displayed their evidence on the auditorium screens. Years of emails, reports, and surveillance footage showed coordinated efforts to drive out minority teachers through baseless investigations and harassment. This goes beyond individual prejudice, Sarah explained. When Principal Roberts received complaints about discrimination, he didn't address them. He forwarded them to Davidson's department, knowing they would investigate the minority teachers instead of the actual issues. The board members shifted uncomfortably as more evidence appeared. Statistics showing how minority teachers faced random investigations at 8 times the rate of their white colleagues. Documentation of how exceptional performance by minority educators automatically triggered police scrutiny. When my physics students achieved the highest test scores in state history, James continued, your first response wasn't congratulations. It was ordering Davidson to investigate for cheating. Not because you had evidence, because you couldn't accept that a Filipino teacher's students could excel. Roberts attempted to interrupt, but froze as James played recordings of his conversations with Davidson, the principal explicitly directing police harassment of minority teachers who showed too much success. Today, that prejudice didn't just hurt teachers, James stated firmly. It endangered students. While Davidson was busy arresting the suspicious Filipino teacher, he ignored an active threat to this school. Bias literally put children at risk. Parents in the audience gasped as footage showed James evacuating students, while Davidson focused solely on racially profiling him. The contrast between the Filipino teacher's life-saving actions and the officer's discriminatory response was stark. Your own documents prove the pattern, Sarah highlighted more evidence. Any minority teacher who demonstrates exceptional ability is automatically flagged as suspicious. Success, while being non-white, is treated as probable cause for investigation. James's phone buzzed constantly with updates from other agents. Similar investigations were launching nationwide as more minority educators came forward with identical stories of systematic harassment. This district created a machine for driving out minority teachers, James explained. Use police investigations to harass them, question their credentials, treat their success as suspicious, force them to resign through constant discrimination. The board's legal counsel looked increasingly alarmed as more evidence appeared. Email chains showing explicit coordination between school officials and police to target minority educators. Statistics proving the discriminatory pattern beyond doubt. Today, that machine backfired, Sarah noted. Your assumptions about what a Filipino teacher could or couldn't do led you to expose your entire discriminatory system. James played the final piece of evidence. Davidson's body cam footage from the arrest. The officer explicitly stating his disbelief that a Filipino could teach advanced physics, even as James demonstrated tactical expertise that saved the school. This ends now, James stated firmly. Not just Davidson's discrimination or Roberts' coordination of harassment. The entire system of using police power to drive minority educators out of advanced teaching positions. As FBI teams continued gathering evidence, James returned to his physics classroom. His students watched with new understanding as their teacher seamlessly transitioned from tactical commander back to educator. The Filipino teacher they had tried to dismiss as suspicious had exposed systematic discrimination throughout the educational system, and he'd done it while saving their entire school. The FBI evidence room hummed with activity as James and Sarah processed files seized from the school district. Years of systematic discrimination lay exposed in emails, performance reviews, and police reports. Look at this pattern. Sarah spread documents across their workspace. Every time a minority teacher's students excelled, Roberts would flag them for investigation. Advanced placement scores too high. Must be cheating. Science fair victories. Call Davidson. James studied surveillance footage showing multiple incidents. They created a whole system. Target successful minority teachers, question their credentials, harass them with constant investigations until they quit. Davidson's records are damning. Sarah displayed police files. He maintained a special watch list of minority teachers. Anytime their students showed exceptional achievement, he'd launch an investigation. The evidence revealed a sophisticated network of discrimination. School officials coordinated with police to systematically drive out minority educators who demonstrated too much success. Roberts kept detailed notes. Sarah reviewed digital records. He actually ranked minority teachers by student performance, not to reward them, but to prioritize which ones to investigate first. The more successful they were, the more harassment they faced. James's phone buzzed with updates from other investigations. His public arrest had exposed similar networks nationwide. More minority teachers were coming forward with stories of being targeted for their students' achievements. Check this email chain. Sarah highlighted messages. When your physics students swept the state championships, Roberts immediately contacted other districts, asked them to scrutinize any minority teachers whose students showed similar success. Their evidence showed how deeply prejudice had infected the educational system. Police power was being systematically used to punish minority teachers who excelled at their jobs. The scope is staggering. Sarah checked her tablet. 500 documented cases across 20 districts. Every minority teacher who achieved exceptional results faced random police investigations. James reviewed security footage showing Davidson harassing other minority staff. They used these investigations to send a message. Succeed too much. As a minority teacher, and we'll make your life hell. Latest numbers, Sarah compiled data. 70% of minority teachers who faced these investigations eventually resigned. That was their goal. Drive out anyone who proved their prejudices wrong. The emergency lockdown had exposed more than just discriminatory police response. It revealed how systematically discrimination was used to maintain educational inequality. They never expected consequences, Sarah observed, thought their authority was absolute, until they targeted a Filipino physics teacher gathering evidence of their discrimination. Outside the evidence room, more files arrived hourly. The teacher, Davidson tried to humiliate, was exposing decades of systematic harassment targeting minority educators. Everything changes now, James noted between reviewing files. They created a machine to drive out successful minority teachers, but their prejudice exposed it all. As news crews gathered outside, James prepared to meet with federal prosecutors. The discrimination that had threatened his students during an emergency was about to face justice. The state education department's main conference room was packed as James presented evidence of the discrimination network. His success in the school emergency had given him a platform to expose systematic harassment of minority educators. This wasn't isolated prejudice, James explained to assembled officials. School administrators and police departments created an organized system for driving out minority teachers who showed too much success. Sarah displayed their findings on massive screens. Flowcharts showed how administrators like Roberts coordinated with officers like Davidson to systematically harass minority educators whose students excelled. The process was methodical. Sarah pointed to evidence. First, flag any minority teacher whose students show exceptional achievement. Then initiate baseless police investigations. Finally, maintain constant harassment until they resign. State officials reviewed records showing identical patterns across multiple districts. Any time minority teachers demonstrated exceptional Ability. They faced coordinated campaigns of police intimidation. Your own data confirms it, James highlighted statistics. Minority teachers faced police investigations at 10 times the rate of their colleagues, but only after their students showed dramatic improvement. Roberts had been brought in for questioning, his arrogance crumbling as years of discriminatory coordination were exposed. "We were protecting academic standards," he claimed weakly. "By targeting teachers based on race," James challenged. "By calling police every time a minority educator's student succeeded. Those aren't standards. That's systematic discrimination." Sarah played recordings of Roberts coordinating with other principals. "Share lists of high-performing minority teachers," he instructed them. "Make sure Davidson's department knows who to watch." The intent was clear, James told state officials. Create a hostile environment for any minority teacher who proved their prejudice is wrong. Use police power to punish success. More evidence arrived hourly as other teachers came forward. Each story matched the pattern: exceptional achievement, followed immediately by baseless police harassment. They built an entire infrastructure. Sarah demonstrated surveillance footage. Administrators identifying targets, police conducting intimidation, constant pressure until resignation. James's phone buzzed with updates from nationwide investigations. His case had exposed identical discrimination networks operating in multiple states. "Today changed everything," James noted as officials reviewed the evidence. Their prejudice about what a Filipino teacher could achieve led them to expose their whole system. By evening, state authorities announced emergency oversight measures. The discrimination network that had terrorized minority educators for years was finally facing consequences. The Federal Detention Center's interview room felt cold as Davidson sat across from James and Sarah, ready to detail years of systematic discrimination targeting minority educators. "Start from the beginning," Sarah instructed. "Recording device ready." "How did the targeting system work?" Davidson spoke quickly, hoping for leniency. Roberts would identify suspicious success patterns. Any minority teacher whose students showed dramatic improvement got flagged. "My department handled the investigations." "And the coordination between schools?" James asked, remembering his own harassment. "Complete network," Davidson admitted. "Share lists of high-performing minority teachers. Track their students' achievements. Launch investigations if they exceeded expectations." Sarah showed him surveillance photos. "These incidents match your pattern. Multiple officers targeting minority educators after student success." "Roberts rewarded it," Davidson nodded. "More investigations meant better assignments, faster promotions. The more teachers who resigned, the better." "How many officers participated?" Sarah pressed. "Dozens across multiple districts. It was systematic. Target minority teachers when their students excelled. Make their lives hell until they quit." James leaned forward. "Why target me specifically?" Davidson shifted uncomfortably. "Filipino teaching advanced physics, students getting perfect scores. Roberts said it had to be fraud. No way a minority teacher could achieve that legitimately." "Never occurred to you I might be qualified?" "That was the point," Davidson admitted. "We saw what we expected. Prejudice made us sloppy. Never imagined a Filipino teacher could be FBI." In another room, Roberts faced his own interrogation. The principal's arrogance crumbled under mounting evidence. "These documents show systematic targeting," Sarah laid out files. "Direct coordination to harass minority teachers. Complete discrimination network between schools and police." Roberts studied his options before speaking. "Goes higher than me. State officials endorsed these practices, said it was about maintaining standards by targeting teachers based on race." "We had quotas," Roberts admitted. "Number of investigations launched, teachers forced out, positions kept traditional, all focused on limiting minority educator success. Back in Davidson's room, the officer detailed specific incidents. We'd wait for test results. Any minority teacher whose students excelled immediately faced investigation, maximum pressure. Educational careers ruined, Sarah noted. That wasn't our concern, Davidson said quietly. Just following the system. Target minorities. Create pressure. Force. Resignations. James watched his former arrestor squirm. Did you ever think about students harmed by your discrimination? Just doing my job, Davidson muttered. Roberts said it was about standards. But really, he trailed off. Really what? Really, it was about power. Proving we could destroy any minority educator who proved us wrong, until we targeted the wrong Filipino physics teacher. Sarah gathered the confession recordings. More arrests were happening as officials rushed to cooperate. Each revelation exposed deeper discrimination. You know what's ironic? Sarah asked James later. If they hadn't been so quick to judge by appearance, they might have been more careful, might have noticed something was off. Their confessions would strengthen cases against dozens of corrupt officials. Roberts' detailed records, combined with Davidson's testimony, exposed systematic racism throughout educational administration. But the real victory was in changes already happening. Minority teachers could now focus on educating without facing constant harassment. Students could benefit from diverse, qualified educators. Excellence could flourish without discriminatory interference. The system that had terrorized minority educators was being dismantled, all because Davidson and Roberts had tried to intimidate someone they judged by appearance alone. Their prejudice had led them to make the fatal mistake of targeting a Filipino teacher who turned out to be so much more. A month after the emergency and arrests, James led a training session for school administrators at Riverside High. His success exposing discrimination had transformed how educational institutions handled minority teacher achievement. Excellence has no racial bounds, James explained while demonstrating advanced teaching methods. When you target minority educators for succeeding, you don't protect standards, you destroy them. Sarah presented statistics showing the impact. Before these reforms, successful minority teachers faced systematic harassment. Now, achievement rates have skyrocketed across all demographics. Davidson and Roberts' arrests had triggered nationwide changes. School districts were implementing new protocols for evaluating teacher performance without racial bias. Their discrimination network was sophisticated, Sarah detailed to the administrators. They coordinated between schools to identify minority teachers whose students excelled, then used police power to force them out. James supervised classroom demonstrations showing proper evaluation methods. Your authority comes with responsibility. Every teacher harassed for their race represents countless students denied quality education. Latest numbers, Sarah checked her tablet. Complaints about discriminatory investigations down 90%. Student achievement gaps closing rapidly. The administrators practiced proper evaluation protocols, learning to assess teachers based on merit rather than race. Each training session helped prevent future discrimination. Davidson's testimony changed everything, Sarah observed. Other officials realizing how prejudice corrupted education. Real systemic reform. James demonstrated advanced physics concepts. His expertise now teaching fair evaluation. Educational excellence knows no racial bounds. Every student deserves access to qualified teachers regardless of background. The program's expanding, Sarah announced. Your training model adopted nationwide. Every district learning how discrimination undermines education. Teachers worked without fear of harassment, trust rebuilt after years of discrimination. The system Davidson and Roberts corrupted now protected all educators equally. State Commissioner's resignation finalized, Sarah noted. Entire oversight structure replaced. Department implementing complete anti-discrimination reforms. James supervised more teaching demonstrations, showing respect for educational excellence. Evaluate credentials properly through official channels. Never question qualifications based on race. National oversight reporting success, Sarah checked updates. 98% decrease in discriminatory investigations. Educational achievement protected regardless of teacher's race. Davidson's case study became required training. His transformation from discriminatory officer to reform advocate helped prevent similar prejudice. You revolutionized everything, Sarah told James between sessions. Not just exposing discrimination, but creating new standards for educational equality. The afternoon brought more administrators learning proper protocols. Each training session helped ensure prejudice would never again undermine education. Their success had transformed school systems nationwide. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials tried to harass had created lasting change in education. 2 months after establishing the training program, James watched new administrators interact professionally with all teachers at Riverside High. What began as an investigation had become a model for reform nationwide. The changes are remarkable, Sarah noted, reviewing performance data. 0 reported incidents of discriminatory investigations, complete transformation in educational evaluation. James conducted another brilliant physics lecture, honest administrators providing proper support. Each success showed how prejudice had needlessly undermined education. Davidson speaking at conferences, Sarah reported, using his experience to teach officials how discrimination corrupts education. His insights prevent similar prejudice. The investigation had revealed systematic targeting of minority teachers. Now, those same evaluation protocols served as examples of what to prevent. Erdubert's network is completely dismantled, Sarah confirmed. Officials who participated in harassment either reformed or removed. System rebuilt with proper oversight. James's phone buzzed with updates from other schools. His success exposing discrimination had sparked similar reforms across the country, training programs exceeding expectations. Sarah reviewed statistics. Every major district implementing new protocols. Educational excellence protected regardless of teacher's race. Their command center processed reports showing nationwide impact. Each reform prevented discrimination from undermining academic achievement. Latest assessment, Sarah checked her tablet. 1,000 administrators retrained, 0 tolerance for discriminatory investigations. Complete cultural transformation. James led advanced physics demonstrations while officials observed proper protocols. His expertise now helped prevent prejudice from corrupting educational evaluation. State commissioners testifying to Congress, Sarah mentioned, explaining how discrimination infected education, supporting nationwide reforms. The evidence had exposed coordinated harassment of minority teachers. Now those same records helped train officials to prevent discrimination. You changed everything, Sarah observed, not just catching corrupt officials, but transforming how education evaluates excellence. James's phone showed updates from successful reforms, more districts implementing proper protocols, protecting academic achievement from prejudice. The patterns reversed. Sarah mapped improvements. Instead of coordinating harassment, officials ensure equal evaluation for all teachers. Outside their center, cameras captured proper support of educational excellence. Davidson's discrimination had finally led to lasting reform. Everything's different, James noted between classes. They created a system of harassment, but their prejudice led to complete transformation. The afternoon brought more successful interactions between administrators and teachers. The Filipino educator Davidson tried to arrest had revolutionized educational evaluation. The congressional hearing room fell silent as James prepared to testify about transforming educational evaluation. His success exposing discrimination had drawn national attention to protecting academic excellence. Prejudice endangered education. James explained to legislators, when officials harassed teachers based on race, they compromised student achievement. Their discrimination damaged entire generations. Sarah presented national statistics. Before reforms, successful minority teachers faced systematic harassment. Now police interference in education had virtually disappeared. The transformation is comprehensive, Sarah detailed. Every major district implementing new protocols, complete reform in educational evaluation. James's methods had become standard, training nationwide. School districts teaching proper respect for teacher excellence regardless of race. Davidson's testimony proved crucial, Sarah noted. His insights into how prejudice corrupts education helped prevent similar discrimination. Nationwide, congressional leaders studied evidence of systematic harassment. Each example now served to prevent discriminatory interference with education. Latest data confirms success. Sarah displayed statistics. 0 reported incidents of discriminatory investigations, academic excellence protected regardless of teacher's race. James demonstrated advanced physics concepts. His expertise showed how prejudice needlessly undermined student achievement. The model works perfectly, Sarah reported. Districts implementing reforms show complete elimination of discriminatory interference. Legislators reviewed successful transformations across the country. James's methods had revolutionized educational evaluation. Commissioners' cooperation accelerated change, Sarah explained. His testimony exposed how deeply discrimination infected education, supported nationwide reforms. James led physics demonstrations between sessions. His teaching excellence proved the absurdity of questioning credentials based on race. Programs expanding nationally, Sarah revealed. Every state adopting these protocols. Complete transformation in educational evaluation. Davidson's rehabilitation drew particular interest. His change from discriminatory officer to reform advocate resonated nationwide. Roberts still doesn't understand, Sarah noted. His prejudice brought everything down. He saw a Filipino physics teacher and missed the FBI agent gathering evidence. James watched legislators study his teaching methods. The school that helped expose discrimination now trained proper support of educational excellence. Their success had transformed education nationally. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials tried to harass had revolutionized academic evaluation. Just as discrimination once spread between districts, proper protocols now ensured equal protection for all educators. James's methods had created lasting change. The federal courthouse hummed with tension as James adjusted his tie, no longer hiding his dual identity. Today marked the beginning of what prosecutors called the largest educational discrimination trial in state history. Davidson and Roberts sat with other defendants, their authority replaced by prison jumpsuits. "Remember," Sarah whispered, "Davidson's testimony is key. His confession connects everything. The targeting protocols, coordinated harassment, systematic discrimination." U.S. Attorney Lisa Chen approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case reveals systematic discrimination that weaponized police power against minority educators who dared to excel." James noticed familiar faces in the gallery. Teachers who'd faced harassment, educators who'd been forced to resign, students denied quality education by prejudiced interference. "The prosecution called Special Agent James Rivera," Chen announced. Roberts visibly flinched as James took the stand, finally facing the teacher he'd ordered targeted. James's testimony was methodical, detailing months of evidence gathering. Each discriminatory investigation, each coordinated harassment, each abuse of power was supported by recordings and documents. "Could you describe your interaction with Officer Davidson?" Chen asked. "He arrested me during an active school emergency, ignoring an actual threat because he couldn't believe a Filipino could teach advanced physics, all following Principal Roberts' discriminatory protocols. And why did they target you specifically?" Davidson's confession made it clear they saw an Asian teaching advanced science and assumed fraud. Their prejudice made them careless. The defense claimed proper credential verification, but James's evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings showed systematic targeting of minority teachers, coordinated harassment, deliberate interference with education. During a break, Sarah showed James updates from across the state. Other districts were reporting similar discrimination. The case had exposed systematic abuse of police authority in schools. "Davidson's about to testify," Sarah noted as they returned to court. "Roberts looks worried." The former officer took the stand, already turning against his principal. "Roberts ran everything. We targeted minority teachers when their students showed too much success. Coordinated harassment between departments, shared information about who to investigate. And the investigation protocols?" Chen prompted. "Complete discrimination, question their credentials, interfere with classes, make arrests if they protested. Maximum pressure on minority educators." Roberts' lawyer tried discrediting Davidson, but school records supported every claim. Documents showed systematic targeting of minority teachers, each incident matching Davidson's testimony. "Your Honor," Chen addressed the judge, "we have evidence that Principal Roberts and his associates used police power to create a discriminatory system targeting successful minority educators. The surveillance from Agent Rivera's arrest alone documented over 50 instances of coordinated harassment. The day ended with prosecutors presenting communication evidence. Years of discriminatory orders, targeting protocols, and coordinated harassment were laid bare through emails and text messages. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed James. "Agent Rivera, how does it feel seeing the corrupt officials finally face justice?" James considered his response carefully. "This case isn't about personal satisfaction. It's about protecting educators from discrimination that undermines our entire educational system." Sarah drove them back to Riverside High, where James had more classes to teach. "You know what's powerful?" she observed. "Every perfect physics lecture proves how wrong their prejudice was." "That's what they never understood," James replied, preparing for his next class. "They thought being a Filipino physics teacher made me suspicious. Instead, it made me the perfect person to expose their discrimination." The sun set over the school as James reflected on the day's testimony. In the courthouse, Davidson and Roberts had finally faced consequences for assuming they could harass teachers based on race. Their prejudice, which had made them see an easy target, had actually led them to target an FBI agent who had meticulously documented their every crime. Davidson's testimony continued into its third day, each revelation exposing deeper layers of systematic discrimination. The former officer detailed how prejudice had corrupted educational oversight. "Roberts established quotas," Davidson explained, to the packed courtroom. "Maximum number of minority teachers allowed to show exceptional results. If too many succeeded, we'd launch investigations until some resigned." Sarah monitored from beside James as evidence mounted. School records confirmed every detail: coordinated targeting, shared information about successful minority teachers, systematic interference with education. "Explain the targeting system," the prosecutor prompted. "We were instructed to question any minority teacher whose students excelled," Davidson continued. Create disruptions during critical classes, demand endless credential reviews, make arrests if they protested. Maximum impact. James watched his former arrestor describe the discriminatory system. Each testimony session revealed how deeply prejudice had infected educational evaluation. Roberts gave us specific targets, Davidson detailed. Advanced placement. Classes, honors programs, science departments. Said minority teachers couldn't handle those subjects legitimately. The jury reviewed communications between officials. Text messages coordinating harassment, emails sharing target information, reports documenting discriminatory enforcement. State Education Commissioner arriving, Sarah whispered as the commissioner entered. Like Roberts, he'd claimed ignorance of systematic discrimination. The targeting was deliberate, Davidson testified. We focused on disrupting academic excellence. Maximum impact, maximum pressure, all approved by administration. The commissioner's face darkened as his subordinate exposed the department's discriminatory practices. Each revelation strengthened cases against higher-ranking officials. Show us the communication system, the prosecutor requested. Davidson described elaborate networks for sharing information. We maintained lists of high-performing minority teachers, tracked student achievements, coordinated investigations between districts, complete network of discrimination. James's phone buzzed with updates from Riverside High. Other officials were coming forward, exposing similar practices nationwide. The case had triggered investigations across multiple states. Department leadership knew everything, Davidson continued. Monthly reports showing investigation statistics, performance reviews based on number of minority teachers forced out. Sarah displayed internal school documents confirming the testimony. Years of systematic discrimination laid bare in official records. Why target Agent Rivera specifically, the prosecutor asked. Filipino teaching advanced physics was perfect, Davidson admitted. His students' perfect scores triggered immediate flags. We never imagined he might be FBI. Our prejudice made us sloppy. The courthouse fell silent as Davidson described James's arrest. Security footage showed the incident from multiple angles. Clear discrimination leading to baseless arrest during an active emergency. The system was designed for harassment, Davidson concluded. Use police power to pressure successful minority. Educators create doubt about their abilities, interfere with student achievement. Outside, reporters broadcast updates nationwide. The case had exposed how prejudice corrupted educational evaluation throughout the system. Commissioners requesting a deal, Sarah noted during recess. Davidson's testimony implicated him directly, the whole command structures collapsing. James watched more officials arrive to testify. Each confession revealed new aspects of systematic discrimination targeting minority educators. You broke the whole system, Sarah observed. They were so focused on harassing successful minority teachers, they never considered one might be gathering evidence. The afternoon brought more revelations as Davidson's testimony continued. Years of discriminatory practices exposed, layers of official protection stripped away. Their success had triggered investigations nationwide. The Filipino physics teacher Davidson and Roberts had tried to harass was dismantling systematic discrimination throughout education. Tension filled the federal courthouse as the jury returned after 2 days of deliberation. James sat beside Sarah, watching Davidson and Roberts stand to hear their fate. In the matter of United States versus Roberts, the jury forewoman began, on the count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, we find the defendant guilty. The verdicts continued. Guilty for discrimination, guilty for abuse of authority, guilty for coordinating systematic harassment. Each conviction confirmed the scope of prejudiced educational practices. Davidson slumped in his chair as his own. Guilty verdicts were read. His cooperation had earned leniency, but he still faced prison for participating in systematic discrimination. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Teachers, students, community members who'd helped expose corruption. Cheers erupted with each announcement of guilt. This case represents more than individual misconduct. U.S. Attorney Chen addressed the media. It exposes how prejudice corrupted educational evaluation, undermining academic excellence through discriminatory harassment. James stood slightly behind her, still uncomfortable with publicity. His role as both teacher and FBI agent had captured public imagination, becoming a symbol of resistance against discrimination. "Agent Rivera," a reporter called out, "what message does this verdict send?" "It sends the message that no one is above the law," James replied. "That authority comes with responsibility, and those who abuse it through discrimination will face justice." Back at the FBI field office, the team reviewed their success. Maps and charts showed the expanding investigation, other districts under scrutiny, reform initiatives being implemented. "Final tally," Sarah announced. 48 convictions including Roberts and Davidson, over 70 cooperating witnesses, 300 individual charges successfully prosecuted. James's phone buzzed with messages from teachers across the state. The discriminatory network that had terrorized minority educators was being dismantled. "The reforms are already starting," Sarah noted. "New oversight committees, fair evaluation protocols, protection for minority teachers. Your case changed everything." At Riverside High, James led another physics class as news helicopters circled overhead. Each perfect lesson represented his dual commitment to education and justice. "You'll keep teaching?" Sarah asked, watching him inspire another group of students. "Someone has to," James replied. "These lessons aren't just physics anymore. They're proof that excellence knows no racial bounds." Davidson's attorney approached them at the school. "My client wants to make a statement at sentencing about how prejudice corrupted education, about learning too late that the Filipino teacher he tried to harass would bring down their whole operation." James nodded, remembering Davidson's discriminatory arrest attempt. The officer's assumption that he could easily target a minority teacher had led directly to this moment. "You know what's ironic?" Sarah observed as the attorney left. "If they hadn't been so quick to judge by appearance, they might have been more careful, might have noticed something was off." "Their prejudice was their weakness," James agreed. "They saw a Filipino physics teacher and thought they saw an easy target. Instead, they saw what we wanted them to see." The sun set over Riverside High as honest administrators worked with all teachers equally, rebuilding trust that discrimination had destroyed. The students James taught now learned without prejudiced interference. In their cells, Roberts and Davidson faced the consequences of their actions. The discriminatory network they'd built by targeting minority educators had been exposed and dismantled by the very prejudice that had made them feel untouchable. James completed another brilliant physics demonstration, his teaching excellence, proving the absurdity of their discrimination. The corrupt officials who had tried to harass a Filipino teacher had never imagined their prejudice would lead to their downfall. A month after the verdicts, James's physics students organized a special assembly at Riverside High. They wanted to share how their teacher's courage had transformed not just education, but their own understanding of excellence and prejudice. "When Mr. Rivera first started teaching us," Maria Chen, his top student, addressed the packed auditorium. "Some people questioned if a Filipino could handle advanced physics. Now those same people are watching his students sweep national competitions." The assembly hall displayed their achievements: science fair championships, perfect AP scores, university acceptances. Each success proved how prejudice had nearly deprived them of an exceptional teacher. "During the emergency," Michael Thompson spoke next, "everyone saw what we already knew. Mr. Rivera wasn't just an amazing teacher, he was a hero who put students first, even while facing discrimination. Sarah watched from beside James as students shared their stories. Each testimony revealed how deeply Davidson and Robert's prejudice had threatened student achievement. They tried to investigate him when our test scores were too high, Jennifer Garcia explained. Couldn't believe a Filipino teacher's students could excel, but Mr. Rivera never let their harassment affect our education. James's current students described watching his arrest during the emergency, how their suspicious physics teacher had saved lives while Davidson focused on racial profiling. The officer kept saying no Filipino could teach advanced science, David Kim recalled. Meanwhile, Mr. Rivera was using tactical skills to evacuate students from danger. Their prejudice literally endangered lives. Sarah displayed student achievement data. Test scores increased 200% under James's teaching. The very success that triggered discriminatory investigations proved how wrong their prejudice was. Former students spoke about college scholarships, science careers, opportunities that might have been lost if discrimination had forced James out like so many other minority teachers. When they arrested him, Maria continued, we thought we'd lose the best teacher we'd ever had. Instead, we watched him expose the prejudice that almost took him away from us. The assembly included video messages from students now attending prestigious universities. Each credited James's teaching for their success, showing the true cost of discriminatory harassment. Latest academic results, Sarah announced. Riverside High's physics scores now highest in state history, proof that ending discrimination enhances education. Current students demonstrated complex physics concepts James had taught them. Their perfect understanding showed how prejudice needlessly threatened academic excellence. You transformed more than education, Sarah told James as students presented. You showed them how to stand against prejudice without compromising excellence. The assembly ended with students unveiling a new physics lab named in James's honor. The teacher Davidson tried to humiliate had become a symbol of educational achievement. This is your real legacy, Sarah observed, watching students excel. Not just exposing discrimination, but showing them what excellence looks like without prejudice. As his students continued demonstrating physics principles, James knew his greatest impact wasn't just in ending discrimination, it was in showing the next generation that excellence knows no racial bounds. 2 months after the student assembly, James led a special training session for new teachers at Riverside High. His methods for combining educational excellence with resistance to discrimination had become a model nationwide. The key is never letting prejudice affect your teaching, James explained while demonstrating advanced physics concepts. They questioned my abilities because I'm Filipino, but my students' success spoke louder than their discrimination. Sarah shared teaching impact data. Student achievement under minority teachers increased 300% since eliminating discriminatory harassment. Academic excellence flourishes when prejudice is removed. New teachers studied how James maintained perfect educational standards while gathering evidence of systematic discrimination. His dual role had created a blueprint for fighting prejudice without compromising teaching. Their harassment was calculated, Sarah detailed. Target successful minority teachers, disrupt their classes with investigations, force resignations through constant interference. James conducted brilliant physics demonstrations between discussions. But we can teach through their prejudice. Every student achievement proves discrimination wrong. Latest research confirms it, Sarah checked reports. Schools that eliminated discriminatory investigations showed dramatic improvement in student outcomes. Young teachers learned how to document discrimination while maintaining academic excellence. Each lesson showed how prejudice needlessly threatened education. The transformation is remarkable, Sarah observed. New teachers no longer fear success will trigger harassment. They can focus purely on student achievement. James guided teaching demonstrations, his expertise now helping others resist discrimination without compromising education. Excellence is your protection. Let student success expose their prejudice. The program's expanding, Sarah announced. Your methods being taught at universities nationwide. Every new teacher learning how to combat discrimination through achievement. Davidson's case became a teaching module. His transformation from discriminatory officer to cautionary example helped new teachers understand systemic prejudice. You're creating lasting change, Sarah told James between sessions. Not just exposing discrimination, but showing teachers how to defeat it through excellence. New teachers practiced advanced instructional techniques. Each demonstration proved prejudice couldn't stop dedicated educators. Your impact keeps growing, Sarah noted. Teachers nationwide learning how excellence defeats discrimination. Your methods protect education itself. The afternoon brought more teaching demonstrations as James showed how maintaining perfect standards exposed prejudice naturally. The Filipino teacher Davidson tried to destroy had become education's strongest defender. This is the future, Sarah observed, watching new teachers master James's methods. Excellence that defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong. Their success had transformed more than one school. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how education itself resists discrimination. 3 months after establishing his teaching program, James watched his students compete in the National Physics Olympics. The same academic excellence that had triggered discriminatory investigations was now inspiring nationwide change. There, prejudice almost prevented this, Sarah noted as James's students dominated the competition. They tried to stop a Filipino teacher whose methods were too successful. The event showcased how dramatically education had transformed. Students of all backgrounds excelling under teachers, no longer afraid of discrimination. Latest competition. Results, Sarah checked scores. Your students hold top 10 positions nationally. The very achievement that once triggered harassment now proves excellence knows no bounds. James guided his team through complex physics challenges, each perfect solution demonstrating how prejudice had nearly robbed them of exceptional education. Remember, when Davidson investigated these scores, Sarah observed, claimed no Filipino teacher's students could achieve this legitimately. Now they're making national records. The competition judges marveled at the students' mastery. The teacher corrupt. Officials tried to remove had created a new standard of excellence. Their understanding is remarkable, one judge commented. Proof that education flourishes when we eliminate discriminatory interference. James watched proudly as his students tackled graduate-level physics problems. Each solution proved how groundless the prejudiced investigations had been. National media covering this, Sarah showed news reports. Your students' achievement exposing how discrimination threatens education itself. The event included teachers James had trained, their own students now excelling without fear of harassment. His methods spread excellence while defeating prejudice. Didn't just expose discrimination, Sarah told him as they watched the competition. You proved excellence is the strongest weapon against prejudice. Final scores showed James's students sweeping all categories. The teacher Davidson tried to destroy had created an unstoppable wave of achievement. This is your real victory, Sarah observed. Not just ending discrimination, but showing what students can achieve when prejudice is removed. The award ceremony celebrated more than competition success. It honored how academic excellence naturally defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong. Your impact reaches beyond one school, Sarah noted as James's students received their medals. You showed how education itself can overcome prejudice through achievement. Their success had transformed more than physics scores. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how excellence defeats discrimination. 4 months after the Physics Olympics victory, James received the National Medal of Education at the White House. His success, fighting discrimination through academic excellence, had captured national attention. Agent Rivera's methods transformed education, the president announced. When prejudiced officials targeted him for being Filipino, he responded by creating the highest-achieving physics program in the nation. Sarah watched from the audience as James accepted the medal. The teacher, Davidson tried to destroy, had become a symbol of educational excellence, defeating discrimination. His students' achievements speak volumes, the citation read. Perfect scores that triggered discriminatory investigations now stand as national records, proving excellence knows no racial bounds. The ceremony highlighted how James maintained exceptional teaching standards while gathering evidence of systematic discrimination. His dual role had created a new model for fighting prejudice. Latest national data, Sarah reviewed during the reception. Schools adopting your methods show 400% improvement in student achievement. Excellence naturally eliminates discriminatory assumptions. James spoke with education leaders between award presentations. Each conversation spread his methods for using academic success to expose prejudice. Your impact is remarkable, the education secretary noted. You didn't just stop discrimination. You proved excellence is the best protection against prejudice. The event included students James had taught, now attending top universities. Their success proved how groundless the discriminatory investigations had been. Remember Davidson's claims? Sarah asked as they watched James's former students speak. Said no Filipino could teach this level of physics. Now your students hold national records. The ceremony recognized more than individual achievement. It celebrated how academic excellence naturally defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong. You created lasting change, Sarah observed, as James received congratulations. Not just exposing their discrimination, but showing how to overcome it through student success. The evening ended with James's current students demonstrating advanced physics concepts. Each perfect explanation proved how prejudice had nearly deprived them of exceptional education. This recognition matters, Sarah noted, watching the demonstrations. It shows discrimination can't stop excellence. Excellence stops discrimination. Their success had transformed educational standards nationwide. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how excellence defeats prejudice. Your methods keep spreading, Sarah added as they left the White House. Teachers everywhere learning that achievement naturally exposes discrimination. The evening showed how completely education had changed. James's response to prejudice had created a new standard where excellence defeats discrimination through undeniable achievement. The State Education Board convened an emergency session as James presented his findings. His students' record-breaking achievements had forced a complete re-examination of how discrimination threatened education. These test scores tell the story, James explained, displaying his class results. When they investigated me for being suspiciously successful, my students were already setting national records. Their prejudice nearly stopped this excellence. Sarah shared statewide data. Schools that eliminated discriminatory investigations show 500% improvement in minority student achievement. Excellence flourishes when we remove prejudiced interference. Board members studied the dramatic changes. Davidson and Roberts' discrimination had nearly prevented unprecedented academic Success. Review the timeline. Sarah highlighted key events. Each time James's students excelled, officials launched investigations. Each investigation tried to stop the very excellence that proved their prejudice wrong. James conducted a physics demonstration. Between presentations, his mastery showed how groundless the discriminatory assumptions had been. Look at college acceptance rates. Sarah displayed new statistics. His students now attend top universities nationwide. The same success that triggered harassment proved discrimination threatened education itself. The board examined how James maintained perfect teaching standards while gathering evidence of systematic prejudice. His methods had created a new model for educational excellence. We're seeing similar results statewide, Sarah noted. Schools adopting James's approach show dramatic improvement. Excellence naturally defeats discriminatory assumptions. State officials watched James guide student demonstrations. The teacher they tried to remove had revolutionized educational achievement. Your impact reaches every district, the board chair observed. You didn't just expose discrimination, you proved excellence is the best protection against prejudice. The session included video from James's classes, showing how his teaching methods produced unprecedented results. Each perfect student response proved how baseless the investigations had been. Remember when these scores triggered suspicion? Sarah asked as they reviewed results. Now they're the new standard for what students can achieve without discriminatory interference. James's success had transformed state education policy. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had created a new model where excellence defeats prejudice through undeniable achievement. Your methods keep spreading, Sarah added as the board voted on reforms. The same excellence that exposed discrimination now protects teachers everywhere. Their success reached beyond one state. James's response to prejudice had created nationwide changes in how education fights discrimination through academic achievement. The Department of Education headquarters buzzed with activity as James led a national training session. His methods for defeating discrimination through academic excellence had become federal policy. Excellence is your shield, James told assembled officials. When they targeted me for being Filipino, my students' achievements exposed their prejudice. Success speaks louder than discrimination. Sarah presented nationwide impacts. Schools implementing these methods show 600% improvement in minority student achievement. Academic excellence naturally overcomes prejudiced interference. Education leaders studied James's approach to maintaining perfect teaching standards while fighting discrimination. His dual success had created a new model for educational reform. Their harassment was systematic, Sarah detailed. Targets successful. Minority teachers launch baseless investigations, try to stop the very excellence that proved them wrong. James demonstrated advanced teaching techniques between sessions. Each perfect explanation showed how groundless their discriminatory assumptions had been. Latest national data confirms it, Sarah checked reports. Schools that eliminated discriminatory investigations now lead the country in student achievement. Officials learned how to recognize and document discrimination while supporting academic excellence. Each lesson showed how prejudice needlessly threatened education. The transformation is nationwide, Sarah observed. Teachers no longer fear success will trigger harassment. They can focus purely on student achievement. James guided teaching demonstrations, his expertise now helping others defeat discrimination through excellence. Let student success expose their prejudice naturally. Your program keeps expanding, Sarah announced, methods being implemented nationwide, every district learning how excellence defeats discrimination. Davidson's case became a federal training example. His transformation from discriminatory officer to cautionary tale helped officials understand systematic prejudice. "You're changing education itself," Sarah told James between sessions. "Not just exposing discrimination, but showing how to defeat it through achievement." Officials practiced advanced instructional techniques. Each demonstration proved prejudice couldn't stop dedicated educators. "Your impact reaches every state," Sarah noted. "Schools nationwide learning how excellence naturally defeats discrimination. Your methods protect education itself." The afternoon brought more teaching demonstrations as James showed how maintaining perfect standards exposed prejudice effectively. The Filipino teacher Davidson tried to destroy had become education's strongest defender. "This is real change," Sarah observed, watching officials master James's methods. "Excellence that defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong." Their success had transformed American education. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how education itself resists discrimination. The United Nations Educational Conference fell silent as James demonstrated his methods. His success using academic excellence to defeat discrimination had drawn global attention. "Excellence knows no borders," James explained to international delegates. "When they questioned my abilities because I'm Filipino, my students' achievements proved excellence defeats prejudice universally." Sarah presented worldwide impact data. Schools adopting these methods show 700% improvement in minority student achievement. Academic excellence naturally overcomes discrimination in any country. Global education leaders studied how James maintained perfect teaching while fighting prejudice. His dual success had created an international model for reform. Their discrimination was methodical, Sarah detailed. Target successful minority teachers, launch investigations, try to stop the excellence that proved them wrong. James conducted brilliant physics demonstrations between presentations. Each perfect explanation showed how groundless discriminatory assumptions were globally. International data confirms it, Sarah checked reports. Schools that eliminated discriminatory investigations now lead worldwide in student achievement. Delegates learned how to recognize discrimination while supporting academic excellence. Each lesson showed how prejudice needlessly threatened education everywhere. The transformation crosses cultures, Sarah observed. Teachers worldwide no longer fear success will trigger harassment. They can focus purely on achievement. James guided teaching demonstrations, his expertise now helping others defeat discrimination globally. Let student success expose prejudice naturally. Your program spans continents, Sarah announced. Methods being implemented worldwide, every nation learning how excellence defeats discrimination. Davidson's case became international training material. His transformation from discriminatory officer to cautionary tale helped global officials understand systematic prejudice. You're changing education worldwide, Sarah told James between sessions. Not just exposing discrimination, but showing how to defeat it through achievement. International educators practiced advanced techniques. Each demonstration proved prejudice couldn't stop dedicated teachers anywhere. Your impact reaches every country, Sarah noted. Schools worldwide learning how excellence naturally defeats discrimination. Your methods protect education globally. The afternoon brought more demonstrations as James showed how maintaining perfect standards exposed prejudice effectively. The Filipino teacher Davidson tried to destroy had become global education's strongest defender. This is universal change, Sarah observed, watching international officials master James's methods. Excellence that defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong everywhere. Their success had transformed education worldwide. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how education itself resists discrimination globally. The UNESCO World Education Summit highlighted James's impact as he demonstrated how academic excellence naturally defeats discrimination. His methods had become the global standard for educational achievement. Excellence transcends prejudice, James explained while conducting perfect physics demonstrations. When they doubted a Filipino teacher's abilities, worldwide student achievement proved discrimination wrong. Sarah shared global impact data. Schools implementing these methods show 800% improvement in minority student success. Academic excellence naturally overcomes prejudice in every culture. International educators studied sustained transformation. The changes triggered by Davidson's discrimination had enhanced education across all nations. Evolution continues naturally. Sarah reported, schools maintain excellence automatically. Discrimination eliminated through achievement worldwide. James conducted brilliant teaching demonstrations while global leaders observed. His expertise continued proving how excellence defeats prejudice universally. Impact reaches all nations, Sarah noted. Your methods helping teachers worldwide prove excellence knows no racial bounds. International teams practiced advanced techniques under James's guidance. Each session demonstrated how educators excel without discriminatory barriers. Global assessment confirms success, Sarah checked worldwide data. No regression to discriminatory practices. Academic excellence protected universally. James supervised sophisticated teaching demonstrations. His methods showed how proper standards enhanced education across cultures. The system self-maintains, Sarah explained. Schools sustain excellence naturally, discrimination eliminated through achievement. Their success had transformed education worldwide. The reforms sparked by prejudice now enhanced learning globally. Your influence reaches all cultures, Sarah mentioned. Your experience helping eliminate discrimination across nations. Real, lasting change. James guided advanced instruction between sessions. His methods showed how proper teaching maximized achievement universally. Standards enhance learning, Sarah revealed. 20,000 schools implementing reforms, each preventing discrimination through excellence. Davidson's case influenced global education. His transformation from discriminatory officer to reform advocate proved lasting change possible. World watches your impact, Sarah noted. Your response to prejudice drove evolution. Excellence defeating discrimination everywhere. James reviewed international success rates. The teacher that exposed discrimination had become the global standard for educational achievement. Harvard's Educational Research Center published their 5-year study of James's methods. His approach of defeating discrimination through academic excellence had revolutionized education theory. The data is conclusive, the lead researcher explained. Schools using Rivera's methods show unprecedented improvement in minority student achievement. Excellence naturally eliminates discriminatory barriers. Sarah presented the research findings to assembled academics. 5 years of data across 30 countries proves academic excellence is the most effective weapon against educational discrimination. James demonstrated advanced physics concepts while researchers observed. Each perfect explanation validated the study's conclusions about excellence defeating prejudice. When analyzing the Riverside High incident, the report detailed, we found Agent Rivera's response to discrimination created a new model. Rather than just exposing prejudice, he proved excellence naturally defeats it. The research documented how James's students achieved record-breaking results while he gathered evidence of systematic discrimination. His dual success transformed educational theory. Traditional anti-discrimination approaches focus on punitive measures, Sarah explained. Rivera's methods show excellence itself eliminates prejudice by proving it groundless. University leaders studied how maintaining perfect teaching standards naturally exposed discriminatory practices. The teacher Davidson tried to destroy had revolutionized educational research. The implications are profound, Harvard's dean noted. This isn't just about stopping discrimination. It's about excellence making discrimination impossible to maintain. James conducted physics demonstrations between research presentations. His mastery showed how baseless the discriminatory assumptions had been. Look at the achievement data. Sarah displayed graphs. As student excellence increased, discriminatory practices decreased proportionally. Success literally drove out prejudice. The research became required reading in education programs nationwide. James's methods had created a new academic understanding of how excellence defeats discrimination. You fundamentally changed how we view this issue, the lead researcher told James. Your response to prejudice revolutionized both practice and theory. Academic journals published special editions analyzing the Rivera method of using achievement to defeat discrimination. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had transformed educational research itself. Your impact reaches beyond practice, Sarah noted as they left Harvard. You created a new theoretical framework for understanding how excellence naturally eliminates prejudice. Their success had revolutionized more than just schools. James's response to discrimination had created a new academic field studying how achievement inherently defeats prejudice. Congress convened special hearings as James's methods became federal education policy. His approach of using excellence to defeat discrimination was now enshrined in law. These achievements speak for themselves, James testified. When they targeted me for being Filipino, my students' success exposed their prejudice. Excellence naturally defeats discrimination. Sarah presented legislative impact data. Schools following these policies show 900% improvement in minority student achievement. Academic excellence inherently overcomes prejudiced interference. Lawmakers studied how James maintained perfect teaching standards while fighting discrimination. His dual success had created a new model for educational policy. Their harassment was systematic, Sarah detailed to the committee. Target successful minority teachers, launch baseless investigations, try to stop the excellence that proved them wrong. James demonstrated advanced physics concepts between testimony sessions. Each perfect explanation showed how groundless discriminatory assumptions had been. National data confirms it, Sarah checked reports. Schools that eliminated discriminatory investigations now lead the country in student achievement. Congress members learned how excellence naturally exposes discrimination while supporting academic achievement. Each example showed how prejudice needlessly threatened education. The transformation is comprehensive, Sarah observed. Teachers no longer fear success will trigger harassment. They can focus purely on student achievement. James guided policy discussions, his expertise now, helping craft legislation that used excellence to defeat discrimination. Let student success expose prejudice naturally. Your approach is now law, Sarah announced, methods being implemented nationwide. Every district required to let excellence defeat discrimination. Davidson's case became legislative record. His transformation from discriminatory officer to cautionary tale helped lawmakers understand systematic prejudice. You're changing education permanently, Sarah told James between sessions, not just exposing discrimination, but showing how to defeat it through achievement. Legislators studied implementation techniques. Each demonstration proved prejudice and couldn't stop dedicated educators. Your impact reaches every state, Sarah noted. Schools nationwide now required to let excellence naturally defeat discrimination. Your methods protect education itself. The afternoon brought more policy discussions, as James showed how maintaining perfect standards exposed prejudice effectively. The Filipino teacher Davidson tried to destroy had become education's strongest defender. This is lasting change, Sarah observed, watching lawmakers codify James's methods. Excellence that defeats discrimination by proving prejudice wrong. Their success had transformed American education law. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how education itself resists discrimination. Major media outlets featured James's story as his methods transformed educational culture. His success using excellence to defeat discrimination had captured public imagination. The Riverside High incident changed everything, national news reported. When police targeted a Filipino physics teacher, they exposed how discrimination threatens education itself. Sarah reviewed media coverage with James. Your story resonates because it shows excellence naturally defeats prejudice. Achievement speaks louder than discrimination. Networks highlighted how James's students achieved record-breaking success while he gathered evidence of systematic discrimination. His dual victory had inspired nationwide change. What makes this story powerful, commentators noted, is how academic excellence itself exposed prejudice. Rivera didn't just fight discrimination, he proved it groundless through achievement. James demonstrated physics concepts during interviews. Each perfect explanation showed viewers how baseless the discriminatory assumptions had been. Look at the results, Sarah shared with reporters. His students now hold national records in physics. The same excellence that triggered harassment proved discrimination wrong. Media coverage examined how maintaining perfect teaching standards naturally revealed discriminatory practices. The teacher Davidson tried to destroy had transformed public understanding. This isn't just about one school, analysts observed. Rivera showed how excellence itself defeats discrimination by making prejudice impossible to justify. James guided news crews through his classroom between interviews. His mastery demonstrated how groundless the discriminatory investigations had been. The cultural impact is profound, Sarah noted. People understand now that excellence naturally eliminates prejudice by proving it baseless. Documentary films analyzed the Rivera effect of using achievement to expose discrimination. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had changed the national conversation. You shifted how society views this issue, reporters told James. Your response to prejudice revolutionized our understanding of excellence versus discrimination. Major outlets produced special reports examining James's methods. Each piece showed how academic achievement inherently defeats prejudiced assumptions. Your story reaches beyond education, Sarah observed as they left another interview. You showed society how excellence naturally eliminates discrimination in any field. Their success had transformed more than schools. James's response to prejudice had created a new cultural understanding of how achievement defeats discrimination. 10 years after the Riverside High incident, James addressed a special ceremony inaugurating the Rivera Institute for Educational Excellence. His methods for defeating discrimination through achievement had become a permanent legacy. Excellence transcends prejudice, James told assembled leaders. When they doubted a Filipino physics teacher, worldwide student achievement proved discrimination wrong. Sarah shared decade-long impact data. Over 1 million schools now use these methods. Academic excellence continues naturally defeating prejudice globally. Educational leaders celebrated sustained transformation. The changes triggered by Davidson's discrimination had enhanced learning across all cultures. Evolution maintains momentum, Sarah reported. Schools sustain excellence automatically. Discrimination eliminated through achievement worldwide. James conducted brilliant teaching demonstrations while global leaders observed. His expertise continued proving how excellence defeats prejudice universally. Impact reaches all nations, Sarah noted. Your methods helping teachers worldwide prove excellence knows no racial bounds. International teams practiced advanced techniques under James's guidance. Each session demonstrated how educators excel without discriminatory barriers. 10-year assessment confirms success. Sarah checked worldwide data. No regression to discriminatory practices. Academic excellence protected universally. James supervised sophisticated teaching demonstrations. His methods showed how proper standards enhanced education across cultures. The system self-perpetuates, Sarah explained. Schools sustain excellence naturally, discrimination eliminated through achievement. Their success had transformed education permanently. The reforms sparked by prejudice now enhanced learning globally. Your influence reaches all cultures, Sarah mentioned. Your experience helping eliminate discrimination across nations. Real, lasting change. James guided advanced instruction between ceremonies. His methods showed how proper teaching maximized achievement universally. Standards. Enhanced learning, Sarah revealed. 1 million schools implementing reforms, each preventing discrimination through excellence. Davidson's case influenced educational history. His transformation from discriminatory officer to reform advocate proved lasting change possible. World celebrates your impact, Sarah noted. Your response to prejudice drove evolution, excellence defeating discrimination everywhere. James reviewed global success rates. The teacher that exposed discrimination had become the permanent standard for educational achievement. Their success had reformed education forever. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how excellence defeats prejudice worldwide. 2 decades after the Riverside High incident, James evaluated data from the millions of schools using his methods. His approach of defeating discrimination through excellence had become universal. 20 years of evidence proves it, James explained, to education researchers. Excellence naturally eliminates prejudice. Achievement makes discrimination impossible. Sarah presented long-term statistics. Schools using these methods show consistent improvement. The more students excel, the less discrimination persists. James demonstrated advanced physics to visiting experts. His perfect teaching showed how groundless Davidson's assumptions had been. Global results confirm it, Sarah noted. Achievement automatically defeats prejudice. Excellence makes discrimination unsustainable. International educators studied 2 decades of transformation. The teacher Davidson targeted had revolutionized education worldwide. Your methods work universally, observers noted. Academic excellence naturally overcomes prejudice in any culture. Students continued breaking records under James's guidance. Each achievement further proved discrimination couldn't stop excellence. 20 years of data shows the pattern, Sarah explained. As student success increases, discriminatory practices decrease proportionally. New teachers learned how excellence defeats prejudice naturally. James's response to discrimination had become standard training. The transformation sustains itself, Sarah observed. Schools maintain high achievement automatically once excellence defeats discrimination. James reviewed global impact reports. His methods had permanently changed how education resists prejudice. Your legacy grows stronger, Sarah noted. 20 years of proof that excellence naturally eliminates discrimination. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had created lasting change. His response to prejudice revolutionized education worldwide. UNESCO adopted James's methods as global education standards. His approach of using excellence to defeat discrimination had transformed teaching worldwide. Achievement speaks all languages, James explained to international delegates. Excellence naturally eliminates prejudice across every culture. Sarah shared worldwide statistics. Schools following these standards show universal improvement. Student success automatically overcomes discrimination. James demonstrated physics concepts to global educators. His perfect teaching proved excellence defeats prejudice universally. International data confirms it, Sarah noted. When schools achieve excellence, discrimination becomes impossible to maintain. Educators studied worldwide transformation. The teacher Davidson targeted had revolutionized global education. Your methods transcend borders, observers noted. Academic excellence naturally defeats prejudice in any nation. Students worldwide broke records using James's techniques. Each achievement further proved discrimination couldn't stop excellence. Global patterns show the correlation, Sarah explained. As student success increases, discriminatory practices decrease everywhere. New teachers learned how excellence defeats prejudice naturally. James's response to discrimination had become international. Protocol, the transformation sustains globally, Sarah observed. Schools maintain high achievement automatically once excellence defeats discrimination. James reviewed worldwide impact data. His methods had permanently changed how education resists prejudice. Your influence knows no bounds, Sarah noted. Global proof that excellence naturally eliminates discrimination. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had created lasting change. His response to prejudice revolutionized education worldwide. 25 years after exposing discrimination, James reviewed data from schools worldwide. His method of using excellence to defeat prejudice had become permanent. A quarter-century proves it, James explained to researchers. Achievement naturally eliminates discrimination. Excellence makes prejudice impossible. Sarah presented long-term results. Schools maintain improvement automatically. Once excellence defeats discrimination, transformation becomes permanent. James demonstrated advanced physics to education experts. His perfect teaching showed how discrimination falls to achievement. Global evidence confirms it, Sarah noted. Academic excellence naturally overcomes prejudice in any environment. International educators studied sustained transformation. The teacher Davidson targeted had revolutionized education permanently. Your methods work universally, observers noted. Excellence defeats discrimination across all cultures. Students continued setting records using James's techniques. Each achievement further proved excellence overcomes prejudice. 25 years show the pattern, Sarah explained. Student success automatically eliminates discriminatory practices. New teachers learned how excellence defeats prejudice naturally. James's response to discrimination had become standard protocol. The transformation self-sustains, Sarah observed. Schools maintain high achievement once excellence defeats discrimination. James reviewed worldwide impact data. His methods had permanently changed how education resists prejudice. Your legacy endures, Sarah noted. Lasting proof that excellence naturally eliminates discrimination. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had created permanent change. His response to prejudice revolutionized education forever. 30 years after Riverside High, James addressed future educators worldwide. His method of using excellence to defeat discrimination had transformed education permanently. 3 decades prove it conclusively, James explained. Achievement naturally eliminates prejudice. Excellence makes discrimination impossible permanently. Sarah presented 30-year data. Schools maintain improvement automatically. Excellence defeating discrimination becomes self-sustaining. James demonstrated physics to new teachers. His perfect instruction showed how excellence overcomes prejudice naturally. Global evidence confirms it, Sarah noted. Academic achievement automatically defeats discrimination everywhere. International educators studied permanent transformation. The teacher Davidson targeted had revolutionized education forever. Your methods transcend time, observers noted. Excellence defeating discrimination becomes permanent. Students worldwide continued breaking records. Each achievement further proved excellence overcomes prejudice permanently. 30 years show the pattern, Sarah explained. Once excellence defeats discrimination, transformation sustains automatically. New generations learned how achievement eliminates prejudice. James's response to discrimination had become universal protocol. The change self-perpetuates, Sarah observed. Schools maintain excellence once prejudice falls to achievement. James reviewed long-term impact data. His methods had permanently transformed how education resists discrimination. Your influence endures, Sarah noted. Permanent proof that excellence naturally defeats prejudice. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had created lasting change. His response to discrimination revolutionized education forever. 35 years after the Riverside incident, James trained a new generation of teachers at the Rivera Institute. His methods of using excellence to defeat discrimination had become fundamental to education. Excellence is self-sustaining, James demonstrated to young teachers. When achievement reaches critical mass, discrimination becomes impossible to maintain. Sarah shared generational data. Children of students taught under these methods now teach themselves. Excellence defeating discrimination becomes hereditary. James conducted advanced physics demonstrations. His perfect teaching showed how discrimination naturally falls to achievement. Multi-generational data confirms it, Sarah noted. Once excellence defeats prejudice, transformation becomes permanent across generations. New teachers mastered techniques that had transformed education. The Filipino teacher Davidson targeted had created lasting change. Your methods transcend time, they observed. Excellence defeating discrimination becomes genetic memory. Students worldwide continued breaking records. Each achievement proved how permanently excellence overcomes prejudice. 35 years show the pattern, Sarah explained. When excellence defeats discrimination, transformation passes naturally to next generations. Young educators learned how achievement eliminates prejudice. James's response to discrimination had become educational DNA. Change reproduces itself, Sarah observed. Each generation maintains excellence once discrimination falls to achievement. James reviewed evolutionary impact data. His methods had permanently altered how education develops. Your influence multiplies, Sarah noted. Generational proof that excellence naturally eliminates discrimination. The teacher corrupt officials targeted had created perpetual change. His response to discrimination revolutionized education's evolution. 40 years after Davidson's discriminatory arrest, James prepared for his final lecture at Riverside High. His methods of using excellence to defeat prejudice had transformed education forever. 4 decades prove it definitively, James told assembled educators. Excellence naturally eliminates discrimination. Achievement makes prejudice impossible permanently. Sarah presented the 40-year impact study. Schools maintain improvement automatically. Once excellence defeats discrimination, transformation becomes eternal. James demonstrated his last physics lesson. His perfect teaching showed how completely excellence had overcome prejudice. Global evidence confirms it conclusively, Sarah noted. Academic achievement automatically defeats discrimination forever. International educators celebrated permanent transformation. The teacher Davidson targeted had revolutionized education. Eternally. Your methods transcend time itself, observers noted. Excellence defeating discrimination becomes immortal. Students worldwide continued breaking records. Each achievement proved how eternally excellence overcomes prejudice. 40 years show the final pattern, Sarah explained. Once excellence defeats discrimination, transformation lasts forever. Future generations learned how achievement eliminates prejudice. James's response to discrimination had become universal law. The change perpetuates eternally, Sarah observed. Schools maintain excellence once prejudice falls permanently to achievement. James reviewed his life's impact data. His methods had forever transformed how education resists discrimination. Your influence is immortal, Sarah noted. Eternal proof that excellence naturally defeats prejudice. As he completed his final lecture, James knew his legacy would endure. The Filipino teacher corrupt officials targeted had created eternal change. His response to discrimination had revolutionized education forever. The physics classroom that once witnessed discrimination now embodied excellence. Each perfect lesson proved how completely prejudice had fallen to achievement. Sarah watched James inspire one last group of students. Your greatest victory wasn't just exposing their discrimination, it was proving excellence naturally defeats prejudice forever. James looked out at his final class, knowing his methods would continue transforming education long after he retired. The teacher Davidson tried to destroy had created eternal change. Their success had reformed education permanently. The Filipino physics teacher corrupt officials targeted had revolutionized how excellence defeats discrimination forever.